Welcome back, ladies and gents. This is George Bean with another review. This time, my 30th review. I should say I would like to apologize again for such a long absence from my reviews. I think it may be my suffering from depression that's kept me from doing my reviews lately, as it has been keeping me down emotionally. But thanks to a valid subscriber, Adrian Mendoza, having to ask me if I completely stopped, and I said no, that it was not the end, he said, good to hear. So this boosted me into doing a new review now. So thanks, Adrian. So, off we go. As you can see, I am a huge fan of Scream, based on me wearing the costume, and so much so, I even have the t-shirt on, which looks pretty cool. I got this from Walmart, so huge fan. Now, off we go. Now to say, as I said in my review for Scream, it grossed over $170 million at the global box office, making it the 13th highest grossing film of 1996, the highest grossing film Wes Craven has ever directed, and still is to this day the highest grossing film in the slasher genre. Scream proved that, like its mass of undead villains, the horror genre just would not die. So when it was announced that a sequel, Scream 2, was to be released within the next year by Christmas '97, everyone got pumped for it, and it was no surprise. After impressive test audience screenings of the first film, Dimension Films immediately signed Wes Craven on to direct the sequel and Kevin Williamson to write the script, thus fast-tracking the sequel for development. Craven saying it to be the fastest amount of time it took for him to begin development on the film he's ever done. Now, I think I should bring up the fact of Wes Craven's passing in 2015 due to brain cancer. In light of this, I'd want to say that Wes Craven is one of my all-time favorite directors. He's such a cool guy. The movies he made are amazing. He's one of the very best horror directors out there. He's the guy who reinvigorated the horror genre twice. One with A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, and another with Scream in 1996. That is a very impressive thing he has done. So now I'd like to give a moment of silence for Mr. Craven. Rest in peace, Mr. Wes Craven. You are awesome. Now, off we go. To start things off, let's first talk about the plot. The film is set 2 years after the events of Scream 1, the survivors of the Woodsboro murders. Sidney Prescott, Randy Meeks, Dewey Riley, and Gale Weathers, all once again played by the wonderful Neve Campbell, Jamie Kennedy, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox, the latter whom we all knew by that point had started a romantic relationship behind the scenes. Sidney and Randy have become college students, and they are simply trying to move on from the horrific events that they have gone through, even though their experiences have by then been made into a movie called Stab, in 1 year, believe it or not. But then, just when it seems like Sidney has moved on with her life, another series of murders, orchestrated by a copycat ghost-faced killer, begins to haunt Sidney's life once again, destroying any form of peace she could find. Now faced with this new threat, with this new threat, Sidney, Dewey, and Gale once again come together to solve these murders and stop the new killer. But in order to do that, they must learn the rules of horror sequels, thanks to some delightful input by Randy. For the cast, Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott is literally the best thing this franchise has going for it. She is the heart and soul of the entire Scream franchise. It'd be like making Die Hard without John McClane. It just wouldn't work without those characters. So good job, Campbell. You did great. I love that one scene in the end In the end, when the killer seems apparently shot dead, and Sydney looks at the dead killer, wondering if it'll come back for one last scare, and she thinks for a moment, then points the gun at the killer's head and fires, killing the killer permanently. Her reason? Quote, "Just in case." How about that? That is some Lethal Weapon 2 shit there, man. And in a way, I'm sure it's just me, but I came up with my own little running themes of what emotions Sydney is going through in each films. In the first film, it is grief, as she was grieving for her mother's death. In this film, it is fear, as she is obviously living in fear of what she had gone through in the first film. And in the third film, I believe it is pain, as she is shown to be in pain for her traumatic experiences and what it turns out her mother had done in her past. And finally, in the fourth film, I think it is solace, as Sydney is shown to have moved on from her horrifying past and is trying to find some form of solace in her life. David Arquette and Courtney Cox both return in their roles as Dewey Riley and Gale Weathers, and in the sequel, while they do have a bit of a stance towards each other, they do eventually begin to fall in love for each other by the second act. It's nice to see these two characters develop and grow together in these 4 films. And again, Arquette is great as Dewey, a funny, fun guy you'd want to hang out with. But it seems throughout these films that Dewey has plot armor, as he always manages to survive his many close encounters with Ghostface. Some of these encounters could have been fatal, but he somehow survives. He has plot armor. And of course, we also have Jamie Kennedy returning as our lovable movie geek Randy Meeks. And this time he explains to us the rules to surviving a horror sequel. And of course, it's best to take Randy at his word, as he did suspect Sydney's last boyfriend Billy of being the killer, and he was actually proven to have been right. Even Sydney wasn't blind to Randy's arguments, as she had her own suspicions of Billy making a phone call while in jail to keep her off track from him. Of course, he gave the impression that she may have just been bullshitting herself, but it turned out she was right too. Now, of course, I should mention what would end up becoming his unexpected death. Killing off Randy was a big surprise to many people who loved him, and some said they were saddened that he died. While I as well is a bit saddened that he died, because he was such a cool guy, but I honestly felt his death was necessary, as it helped give the impression that our main heroes could still possibly die. One thing I should also bring up in this scene is in this one scene where Randy is in his film class and he quarrels with a classmate of his, who is played by Joshua Jackson, Charlie from The Mighty Ducks. In it, Joshua Jackson quotes a Ripley line from Aliens where he says, "Get away from her, you bitch." Then Randy tries to correct him, saying, I believe the line is, "Stay away from her, you bitch." It's film class, right? In actuality, in the script, Joshua Jackson was actually supposed to say, "Stay away from her, you bitch." And Randy was supposed to correct him with, I believe the line was, "Get away from her, you bitch." It's film class, right? But apparently, Joshua Jackson did say the quote correctly, but Jamie Kennedy decided to continue the take and miscorrect him, and it seems that Craven decided to keep that take in the film, I guess to make the audience laugh at Randy being wrong for once here. Another returning character is Cotton Weary, played by Liev Schreiber. Cotton was the guy who was Sid accused as her mother's killer, but it turns out that he actually wasn't. So in this film, he's given an expanded role here, as he now has been set free from prison with his innocence cleared, and now wants to have an exclusive interview with Sid, so to at least mend the wounds between them. I will admit, Liev Schreiber is really good in this film. He makes Cotton seems like an okay guy, and as he was wronged and sent to prison for a year. As we all know, Schreiber has gone on to play Sabretooth in X-Men Origins Wolverine, of which he was also really good in. And he also played the character of Raymond Shaw in the 2004 remake of The Manchurian Candidate, which also remake, which also starred Denzel Washington and Meryl Streep. And I will admit, Liev Schreiber's performance in Manchurian Candidate was actually pretty good in that film too. I thought he was really good in that, so check out the Manchurian Candidate remake. I'd recommend it. I may also review it, maybe the original first, but we'll get to that in the future. Back on track. Now to talk about the climax, while I still honestly prefer the first film's climax more so, Scream 1 has the best climax, but Scream 2's climax manages to take the cake in its second place, with some added punch to it. I'm now about to go into the big spoiler aspect in the film, so if you have not seen the movie and not want to know the big twist, please skip to this part right here. Okay? Okay, here goes. Now in the climax, the killer is revealed to be two people again. This time it is Mickey, played by a surprisingly young Timothy Olyphant, whom you may know as Tim from the FX show Justified, and other movies such as Live Free or Die Hard and Dreamcatcher. And the latter killer is Mrs. Debbie Salt, who is also revealed to be Mrs. Loomis, Billy's mother, played by Laurie Metcalf. You know, Roseanne's sister. And Metcalf being in Roseanne among that show's cast was Johnny Galecki, who was in I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was also released in 1987 and was also written by Kevin Williamson. And funnily enough, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, was involved in both in I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream 2. So here we have our Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer connection. I think. But yeah, much like Friday the 13th Part 1, the killer is a pissed-off mother. Having Billy's mother as the killer is a smart choice of a villain for the sequel, as it proves that when it comes to a villain dying, there may somehow be a family who may come for vengeance. I should go into the script changes the film went through during production. You see, in Kevin Williamson's original script, had a different set of killers, Mrs. Debbie Loomis, and shockingly, Derek and Haley. So 3 killers. Much like Mickey, Derek and Haley's motive was the desire for fame, but Debbie kills them both, having her own ulterior plans for Sydney, seeking revenge against her for killing her son Billy. And of course Cotton is in the climax, but he's been bound, and Debbie's plans to pin the murders on Cotton, lightning striking twice. But fortunately, Cotton manages to break free and kill Miss Loomis. But as the survivors, including Gale, embrace, Cotton suddenly kills Gale, intent on wanting to save his own ass from being blamed for the murders. And it ends with a final fight between Cotton and Sydney, both collapsing on the floor, badly injured, the script ending ambiguously with Sydney's survival. However, somehow, the entire script got leaked on the internet, thus revealing the identity of the killers. This forced Craven and Williamson to rewrite the script while they were shooting, specifically the characters' arcs, and most importantly, the climax and the killer's true identities being revealed, all of which we now have in the final film. And by the way, in the original script, Randy was to be Gale's cameraman, and he was to survive in it. Now, if you ask me, I'm somewhat honestly glad of the changes, especially in the character of Derek, because giving Sydney another boyfriend that also turned out to be the killer would have felt like we were rehashing the first film again. So I felt changing him to not being the killer makes him feel like a breath of fresh air this time, and a complete contrast to Billy. Scream 2 was released in cinemas on December 12, 1997, just 1 year after the release of the first film. After Scream 1 became an unexpected success, by late 1997, Scream 2 was then considered such a potential box office success that the James Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies and James Cameron's future mega hit Titanic had to be moved from their release date from December 12th to December 19th, so as not to face the film as competition. You know you made it when your own movie manages to make even Titanic be moved for release next week to not face competition. Upon release, it received generally positive reviews from critics, including Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, and it managed to gross over $172 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film in the slasher genre, behind Scream 1, but ahead of Scream 3. And it was also the 21st highest grossing film of 1997, despite competition from Titanic and Men in Black. Now, for what I think of Scream 2, well, to put it in my own little weird way, I compare Scream 2 more favorably to Lethal Weapon 2, because much like that film, it manages to top the first film by a teeny tiny bit. But it is still an outstanding sequel that does what it is supposed to do. I think the first film is still the best Scream film overall, but in terms of its sequels, Scream 2 is the best out of the 3 sequels. The college setting is a nice change from the Woodsboro setting in the first film. But by that point, I was already starting to miss Woodsboro and wanted to go back there. But of course, we do actually return to Woodsboro in Scream 4, but still. Overall, in terms of my rating, Scream 2 gets a well-deserved 8 stars. It takes everything great about its predecessor and makes it bigger and better, and it expands on the main character's story arcs to a new level. While it may not exactly be on par with its predecessor, but it is certainly the best out of the 3 Scream sequels. If Scream 1 left you pumped for excitement, then Scream 2 is definitely worth a watch immediately afterwards. So, check out Scream 2 after watching Scream 1. Pretty damn good sequel. So thanks very much for watching, ladies and gents, and until then, see you next time. Peace!